Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're still on the foundations. Now we're going to work on the commit messages. This is part of the foundations course. The lesson will explain the importance of good commit messages, how to write them, and what to commit, when to commit, and why having a history of good commits is so important. Once again, a commit, what is that? Commit's just like a little bit of code. You've made a little bit of progress on a project, and you want to save it so that if you make changes in the future that you don't want, you want to be able to jump back to this last little bit of code that you've created, and that's called a commit. So the lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson. How to write a meaningful commit message, why meaningful commit messages are important, and when to commit. Are commit messages so important they deserve their own lesson? Yes. Let me give you a quick list of reasons why. Number one, when you are applying for jobs, employers will look through your projects on GitHub and they will look through your commit history. Having good commits as a novice developer will help you stand out. Having a good commit message history will allow you or other developers working on your code to quickly see what changes were made and why. This is useful if a bug is found in the code that needs to be fixed. Having good commit history will also be helpful if you come back to your project you were working on after stepping away for a while. You likely won't remember your thought process and the changes made when initially writing your code. So yeah, these are all legit good things. So when to commit. A good way to view a commit is like a single snapshot of your code. At the moment that the commit is made, that version of your code up to that point will be saved for you to revert back to or look back at. When writing code, it's considered best practice to commit every time you have a meaningful change in the code. This will create a timeline of your progress and show you your finished code didn't appear out of nowhere. This means, like a commit, if you get a piece of code you are working on to function like you want it to, fix a typo or fix a bug, as you gain experience, you will develop a better feel for what should be committed. There will come a time when you are working on a project and you finally get something just right. This would be a good time to commit. And then maybe 30 seconds to a few days later, it breaks. You have no idea what you changed. Everything looks to be the same. And you don't remember editing that line. But alas, it isn't working how you want it anymore. So you'd be able to go back through your commit history and either revert your code back to the last commit you made when you first got that part working, or go back and see what your code looked like at that point in time. So yeah, these are all completely, I would agree with all this 100%. The article, How to Write a Git Commit Message, covers all the main bases of how to write a good commit message. The whole article is great and informative, but the meat of the article is the 7 rules of a great commit message. Okay, cool. And so then it has some things. That's the assignment to read this article, so that's what we'll do. And then it's going to have tips and things to remember, and we'll go through that after we read the article. So how to write a git commit message. Commit messages matter. Here's how to write them well. So here they have like a little cartoon-like thing, created main loop and timing control. That was 14 hours ago. Enable config file parsing, miss bugs fixes, and it just keeps going through here. More code, here have code, AAAA. So this is an example of some bad commit messages. As the project drags on, my commit messages get less and less informative. Right. So here, this is an example of good ones. Miscellaneous bugs fixes. It gets bad pretty much right away. And then more code, AAA. This is all just examples of how funny it is when commit histories go bad and they don't look good. So it starts off, introduction. Why good commit messages matter. If you browse the log of any random Git repository, you will probably find its commit messages are more or less a mess. For example, take a look at these gems from my earlier days of committing to Spring. So yeah, they're looking at this one. Tweaks to package info Java file. That's not helpful, right? Polishing, bad example. Pruned empty directories. That might be okay. So yeah, look at that one. Is cglib class name to autoutils. Okay, so that's an example of a long undescribed. This is just kind of example of not great git commit history. Compare that to these most recent ones. So here's our author saying that these are good ones. Fix failing composite property source tests. Yeah, that's good. That tells you what it does. Rework property source early parsing logic. Add tests. Update docbook. Polish Mockito usage. So yeah, which would you rather read, that or tweaks to package JSON file, consolidate util, and then like this one, polishing, extremely vague and nobody knows what that means. The former varies in length and form. The latter is concise and consistent. So length and form, this one's just one word. This is just this huge thing where you can't even get to the end of it. And then this, you can all see them within their certain amount of space, and then they have the same capitalization, whereas this one's the capitalization's all over the place. This one, they all start with a capital word. Just makes it cleaner and easier to read. Okay, while many repository logs look like the former, there are exceptions. The Linux kernel and Git itself are great examples. Look at Springbot. Linux kernel, cool. This must be Git history of Linux kernel. Oh, wow, look at that. He's actually working on it right now, today, on September 11, 2022. Notice this looks like he's moving things around a lot. Move tag. So he's just moving that to there. Moving memory barrier from first set to buffer. Here's an example if you didn't use a capital. So even Linus Torvald isn't perfect. Okay, cool. Git itself. Cool. Here we go. Somebody else. The 19th branch merge. A lot of branch merging. Springbot. But the cool thing is, like, just reading these messages, you kind of have an idea. Oh, that one's not there. And any repository managed by Tim Pope. So Tim Pope. Remove folder expression from modeling. Vim pathogen. Interesting. Okay, cool. The contributors to these repositories know that a well-crafted git commit message is the best way to communicate context about a change to fellow developers, and indeed to their future selves. A diff tells you what changed, but only the commit message can properly tell you why. Peter Hunters makes this point well. Re-establishing the context of a piece of code is wasteful. We can't avoid it completely, so our efforts should go to reducing it as much as possible. Re-establishing the context of a piece of code is wasteful. Commit messages can do exactly that, and as a result, a commit message shows whether a developer is a good collaborator. This is useful. A commit message shows whether a developer is a good collaborator. So think about that as being, Git messages are a temperature gauge for how good you're going to work as a collaborator. If you haven't given much thought to what makes a Git commit message, it may be the case that you haven't spent much time using Git log, the related tool. There's a vicious cycle here because the commit history is unstructured and inconsistent. One doesn't spend much time using or taking care of it, and because it doesn't get used to or taken care of, it remains unstructured and inconsistent. But a well cared for log is a beautiful and useful thing. Git blame, revert, rebase, log, short log, and other subcommands come to life. Reviewing others' commits, and pull requests becomes something worth doing, and suddenly can be done independently. Understanding why something happens months or years ago becomes not only possible, but efficient. A project's long-term success rests, among other things, on its maintainability, and a maintainer has few tools more powerful than his project's log. It's worth taking the time to learn how to care for one properly. What may be a hassle at first soon becomes a habit and eventually a source of pride and productivity for all involved. This is great stuff. I really need to up my commit message game. In this post, I am addressing just the most basic element of keeping a healthy commit history. How to write an individual commit message. There are other important practices like commit squashing, and I am not addressing here. Perhaps I'll do that in a subsequent post. Most programming languages have well-established conventions as to what constitutes idiomatic style, i.e. naming, formatting, and so on. There are variations on these conventions, of course, but most developers agree that picking one and sticking to it is far better than the chaos that ensues when everybody does their own thing. A team's approach to a commit log should be no different. In order to create a useful revision history, teams should first agree on a commit message convention that defines at least the following three things. Style. Markup syntax, wrap margins, grammar, capitalizations, punctuations. Spell these things out, remove the guesswork, and make it all as simple as possible. The end result will be a remarkably consistent log that not only a pleasure to read, but that actually does get read on a regular basis. Content. What kind of information should the body of the commit message, if any, contain? What should it not contain? Metadata. That should tracking IDs, pull request numbers, etc. be referenced? Fortunately, there are well-established conventions as to what makes an idiomatic Git commit message. Indeed, many of them assumed in the way certain Git commands function. There's nothing you need to reinvent. Just follow the 7 rules below, and you're on your way to committing like a pro. Okay, so the 7 rules of a great Git commit message. 1. Separate subject from body with a blank line. Subject from body with a blank line. Fix typo in introduction to user guide. Separate. Okay, so it's gonna go through with each of these. So I'm just gonna read through them. Limit the subject line to 50 characters. Capitalize the subject line. Do not end the subject line with a period. Okay, don't end with a period. Interesting. Use imperative mood in the subject line. Wrap the body at 72 characters. Wrap the body at 72 characters. Limit the subject line. So maybe if you need to make it, use the body to explain what and why versus how. Okay, for example, summarize changes in around 50 characters or less. More detailed explanatory text, if necessary. Wrap it about 72 characters or so. In some contexts, the first line is treated as the subject of the commit and the rest of the text as the body. The blank line separating the summary from the body is crucial unless you omit the body entirely. Various tools like log, short log, and rebase can get confused if you run the two together. Explain the problem that this commit is solving. Focus on why you are making these changes as opposed to how the code explains that. Are the side effects or other unintuitive consequences of this change? Here's the place to explain them. So further paragraphs come after blank lines. Bullet points are okay. Typically a hyphen or asterisk is used for bullet preceding the single space with blank lines in between, but conventions vary here. If you like this, if you use an issue tracker, references at the bottom there. Yeah. In previous Git commit histories, we would do something like the name of the project, right? Like np-121, that would be the bug. And then you say fix whatever typo thing. So that would relate into the Jira, which is our project management software. And so the project management software could pick that up and recognize that we had made the pull requests because of the commit history. Separate subject from body with a blank line. So though not required, it's a good idea to begin the commit message with a single, short, less than 50 character line summarizing the change, followed by a blank line, and then a more thorough description. The text up to the first blank line in the commit message is treated as the commit title, and the title is used throughout Git. For example, Git format patch 1 turns a commit into email, and it uses this title on the subject's line, and the rest to commit is to the body. Okay, first, not every commit requires both a subject and a body. This is pretty big. And a body. Sometimes a single line is fine, especially when the change is so simple that no further context is necessary. Fix typo in the introduction to user guide. Nothing more need to be said, and the reader wonders what typo was. She can simply take a look at the change itself, i.e. git show, git diff, or git log -p. If you're committing something like this at the command line, it's easy to use the -m option to git commit. So git commit -m. This is what I almost always use. However, when a commit merit a bit more explanation, you can write a body. So they're saying with the body, you just add an extra line in, and then you make a greater description of what happened. Derez the master control program. MCP turned out to be evil and had to become intent on world domination. Derez, that's funny. Commit message with bodies are not so easy to write. With -m option, you're better off writing the message in a proper text editor. If you do not already have an editor set up to use with that, use this section of Progrit. And if you did the Git section with us, then you already know what that means. We've already set that up. In any case, the separation of the subject from body pays off when browsing the log. Here's a good log entry. So yeah, that would be a git log situation. And now git log -- one line, which prints out just the subject line. So you can just get the subject line from that. Cool. I don't even remember that really. I don't think I've ever used this before. Git short log, which groups commits by user, again showing just the subject line. Cool. Git short log. Interesting. There are a number of other contexts in Git where the distinction between the subject line and the body kicks in, but none of them work properly without the blank line in between. Cool. So the blank line in between. I actually was completely unaware that that was a good way to structure it. Limit the subject line to 50 characters. Cool. So yeah, you don't want it to go outside of the branch. You see how it truncates it here at 72? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to start blazing through. This is as simple as it sounds. Capitalize the subject line. Yeah. But the first word should be capitalized, and then every other word should be downcased, unless they're proper names, probably. Do not end the subject line with a period. It's pretty straightforward. Use imperative mood in the subject line. Okay, cool. Imperative just means spoken or written as if giving a command or instruction. A few examples: clean your room, close the door, take out the trash. Each of these 7 rules you're reading about right now are written in the imperative. Nice. Okay, so in Spanish, I think this is called subjunctive. They're like orders. Wrap the body at 72 characters. The imperative can sound a little rude. That's why we don't often use it, but it's perfect for get, commit, subject line. One reason for this is that get itself uses imperative whenever it creates a commit on your behalf. For example, the default message created when get merge reads, merge branch my feature. And when using get revert are the thing that with the stuff. So it's just reverting a different branch or a different commit. This reverts commit, and then this is the hash that references that specific commit. So when clicking merge button on a GitHub pull request, merge pull request, this is just another example of a imperative sentence structure. So when you write your commit message in the imperative, you're following Git's own built-in convention. For example, refactor subsystem X for readability, update getting started documentation, remove deprecated methods, release version 1.0.0. Writing this way can be a little awkward at first. We're more used to speaking in indicative mode, which is all about reporting facts, and that's why commit messages often end up reading like this. Fixed bug Y, changing behavior of X. So these are examples of bad commit messages. Sometimes commit messages get written as a description of their contents. More fixes for broken stuff. Sweet new API methods. To remove any confusions, here's a simple rule to get it right every time. A properly formed get commit subject line should always be able to complete the following sentence. If applied, this commit will, your subject line here. Okay, so if applied, this commit will merge or update getting started document. If applied, this commit will release version 1.0. Cool, and that's really useful stuff. Okay. Yeah, if applied, this commit will refactor subsystem X for readability. If applied, this commit will update getting started documentation, blah, blah, blah. Notice that this doesn't work for the following non-imperative forms. If applied, this commit will fixed bug with Y. That doesn't make sense. If applied, this commit will changing behavior of X. Cool. So that's why the imperative's useful here. So if applied, this commit will. That's what we want to commit to memory. Use of imperative is important only in the subject line. You can relax this restriction when you're writing the body. Wrap the body at 72 characters. Git never wraps text automatically. When you write the body of a commit message, you must mind its right margin and wrap text manually. This recommendation is to do this at 72 characters so that Git has plenty of room to indent text while still keeping everything under 80 characters overall. A good text editor can help here. It's easy to configure Vim, for example, to wrap at 72 characters. Traditionally, IDEs have been terrible at providing smart support for text wrapping and commit messages. Although in recent versions, IntelliJ's IDE has finally gotten better at this. But this is a JetBrains tool. We're not using that. It's just kind of like Visual Studio Code, but different. And so we're not going to get into that. I'd call this like wormhole, rabbit hole behavior. Use the body to explain what and why versus how. The commit from Bitcoin Core is a great example of explaining what changed and why. So here, simplify serialize.h exception handling. So remove the state, except mask from the serialize.h stream implementations, as well as related methods. And expect mask always included fail bit, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. Well, it's just basically, this is the indicative. If applied, this commit will simplify serialize h's exception handling. So that passes that test. And then this is a pretty obvious description. I mean, I guess if you were part of this project more, it would make more sense. So yeah, take a look at the full diff and just think how much time the author is saving fellow and future committers by taking the time to provide the context here and now. If he didn't, it would probably be lost forever. In most cases, you can leave out details about how a change has been made. Code is generally self-explanatory in this regard. And if the code is so complex that it needs to be explained in prose, that's what source comments are for. Just focus on making clear the reason why you made the change in the first place and the way things worked before the change. And what was wrong with that? The way they work now and why you decided to solve it the way you did. Wrong on sentence. The first maintainer that thinks you may be yourself. So doing this kind of thing might really pay off. Not only just for the people you're working with, but you'll find your value in it too in the future. So yeah, learn to love the command line. Leave the IDE behind. For many reasons, as there are Git subcommands, it's wise to embrace the command line. Git is insanely powerful. IDEs are too, but each is in different ways. I use IDEs every day, so he uses the JetBrains stuff. We're going to be using Visual Studio Code. And even though I really like the JetBrains tools, you have used others extensively, but I have never seen IDE integration for Git that could begin to match the ease and power of the command line, once you know it. Certain Git-related IDE functions are invaluable, like git rm when you delete a file, and doing the right stuff with Git when you rename one. Where everything falls apart is when you start trying to commit, merge, rebase, and do sophisticated history analysis through IDE. When it comes to wielding the full power of Git, it's command line all the way. Remember that whether you use Bash, ZSH, or PowerShell, there are tab completion scripts that take much of the pain out of remembering subcommand and switches. So read ProGit. So this is a book. This is a rabbit hole situation. We're not going to do that. Cool. So that was the article. I think this was really helpful by C-Beams. Nice. So we'll close those. Now we've completed the assignment. Let's do tips to remember. Using VS Code as your text editor, you should have set this up in the Git Basics section. Will allow you to easily make multi-line commit messages, easily see the character length of each line, and will allow you to use VS Code spell check extensions to make sure your spelling is correct. So use an active voice fixed card. Use an active voice fixed card generator. Yeah, if this commit were applied, it would fix card generator. Avoid using vague comments like updates or saves. Yep, and commit early and commit often. So this section contains questions for you to check your understanding of this lesson on your own. If you're having trouble answering a question, you should click it to review the material links here. What are the two benefits of having well-written commit message and good commit history? It saves you and the people that you're working with work, and it helps you take an iterative process towards software engineering. This unit of work solves this unit of problems, and blah, blah, blah. So writing explicit commit messages is useful for those two reasons. How many characters should the subject line be in the commit message? 72, right? No, 50? Oh, what did he say? Okay, I think it's 72 for the subject line. 50 characters for that one. Okay, so 50 characters. All right, now let's do something. One of my side projects was ImageHawk. It's a tool. Let's look at my commit history. I'm pretty sure this is terrible because I've been doing it all on my own. Just a few linting fixes. This is obviously a bad one. Update gem file. This is not that great. I am kind of saving these conventions here, so it's not completely terrible. Cool. So yeah, I guess that's it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.